Warning: the following program is a satirical look at Indigenous news, politics, and current events. Hipster racism is advised.
Anin bonjour and welcome to the Laughing Drum, television so deeply and profoundly Indigenous our scripts are considered a framework agreement. I am your host Tim Fontaine, and I know this beard makes me look like Julian Assange when he emerged from the Embassy of Ecuador. I can see myself. It's been 2 crazy weeks in the news, and that means we have got an exciting show ahead of us. The Red Power panel is here, and they are primed like a well-oiled res car. This week, the Red Power panel is comic and president of the Métis Mustache Club, Sasha Mark, the Couchiching First Nations Chief of Comedy, Alyssa Blackwolf Kickson, and no one else. Let's get to it.
Finally.
Yes. This has been a game of elimination. Jerry is gone, and we don't know if he'll ever be back. We begin in fear of reverse non-consultation news. When the Squamish Nation in BC announced plans for a housing development that could have as many as 3,000 apartment units, residents of the Kitsilano neighbourhood in Vancouver became a little unnerved or something. A headline from local outlet News 1130 reads, Kitsilano residents hope First Nation will consult them on a massive development plan. And the article began like this: imagine 3,000 apartment units built right by your neighbourhood. Groups in Vancouver's Kitsilano neighbourhood are bracing for that reality. In response, the Assembly of First Nations issued this statement.
No.
Okay, we made that up, but Red Power panel, your thoughts on this story?
This story sounds like it sounds like an indigenous sketch. Like it sounds like an indigenous sketch. It sounds unreal. I feel like the sketch script would be called Kids in the Land. Oh, you know? You heard of Kids in the Hall? What? Get it?
You have a gift. You have a gift, my friend. Alyssa, what did you think of this?
Oh, I cried a little bit when I found out, because I thought, wow, that must be so hard to live like that without consultation. So I put a candle outside my window, I laid down tobacco, I sang an honor song, and then I took a giant dump because I do not care. Consultation? Where are we living?
Apparently not in Kitsilano. I don't know.
This is Canada, country of non-consultations. Get used to it.
But with that in mind, shouldn't First Nations then be the bigger people and actually consult with their neighbors to set an example? I'll play devil's advocate here.
Well, if you look at the optics of the situation, Kitsilano to me has been described as a place that's like the Wosley, so it's a very kind of like hippie-ish kind of neighborhood. But it's housing on stolen land. It's named after Kitsilano, a Squamish chief. So people are asking for consultation on stolen land that's named after a chief. Like, it's so ironic. Like, there's so many levels. It's just like, yo.
Like, being the bigger person is not, forcibly removing everyone from the land. Mm-hmm. That is being the bigger people.
Wouldn't it be neighborly then?
Neighborly, I feel like...
I guess we should say too, though, that they haven't said they're not going to consult. Mm-hmm. I just think it's people's reaction to the story. I think that is funnier than the actual story itself. But sorry, I interrupted you. You were saying.
You did, Tim Fontaine.
I should have consulted first.
Sick of your shenanigans. But, I feel being neighborly, as Indigenous people, we have been neighborly for hundreds of years, I would say. We accepted the blankets, we accepted the schools, and now, I feel like we don't need to consult, Yeah.
We're post-consultation?
We are post-consultation, God damn it.
Is this reverse non-consultation, though?
That's not even a word. So.
A word I just made up now?
You just made that up, so I... border.
Would this be a problem anywhere else, though? I mean, like Vancouver, it's like everybody is in such close proximity to each other. Like, is this a Vancouver story? I don't know.
It is a very Vancouver story. When you see like the issues that are arising out of this, they're like, oh no, we're going to have more traffic. Like, that's their problem. It's a very Vancouver problem, you know? It's like, okay, if that's the least of your problems, then you're fine, you know?
And I mean, a lot of their problems usually stem from, you know, sort of like stereotypical concerns. Like they usually come from a place of ignorance and a place of racism, just like here in Winnipeg with the barracks.
Yeah.
You know?
Kapyong Barracks, for those of you who don't know, it's a former military base in the middle of a pretty affluent neighborhood of Winnipeg that's probably going to become an urban reserve. And there was a lot of controversy over that because people didn't want a reserve in their neighborhood. So,
but they're on our land, so just keep that in mind. People are just going to have to buckle up and accept it.
Okay, if you could build any development in any part of the country, any neighborhood, what would it be?
In this country?
In this country.
Ooh, dang.
Why? What does it matter? Where else would you build?
I don't know.
He's getting creative here.
I don't know. I would probably say Wolseley.
Yeah.
Wolseley, Winnipeg.
Wolseley?
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you build?
I would build an urban reserve.
Yeah.
Kick all the white dreadlocks out. Bring all my people in.
We're going to get complaints to this one.
I think an urban reserve is needed in Wellington Crescent.
Yeah.
That's the rich,
another
rich,
affluent
rich
neighborhood of Winnipeg.
Neighborhood.
Yes.
All right, I think it's time. We haven't seen this for a while, and we spent $275,000 developing this thing. Where does this story put us on the reconciliometer?
I would say my personal opinion, moderate to low.
Yeah? Hovering around there.
Because I think people just need to be more aware of what they're saying to Indigenous people when there's...
I would say it needs to be like lower than low because people need to understand that they are on stolen land. What part of that do you not understand?
So he needs to be sadder than, I guess. For
is that Trudeau?
Yeah.
Like, is that...
Kind of looks like All right. We have to take a short break, my friends, but when we come back, we're going to have more with the Red Power panel. Don't go away. We're going to talk about Joseph Boyden because that's what Indigenous people do. Welcome back to the Laughing Drum, my beloved Laughing Drumlets. I am your host, Tim Fontaine, and I'm here with the Red Power panel. This week, the Red Power panel is comics, Sasha Mark and Alyssa Blackwolf Kickson. Thank you both for being here again. And are you ready for Joseph Boyden?
Can we leave?
Because everyone's favorite cultural chameleon is back, sort of. If you don't remember who he is, allow me to remind you. Joseph Boyden was once a media darling who authored best-selling books like Through Black Spruce and 3-Day Road. They're actually really good books, but he also frequently appeared in the media speaking about Indigenous issues. But it was his frequently changing story about his own heritage that caused an uproar a few years back, particularly an APTN story that questioned whether he was actually Indigenous at all. Boyden has denied being a, quote, pretendian and said that his Indigenous heritage is actually quite minor, but it makes up a big part of how he identifies. I think that's what he's been saying. Anyways, after that whole thing blew up, he kind of laid low, but he's resurfaced in the form of an article in a Paris-based magazine called America, where he weighs in on Elizabeth Warren, a U.S. senator who has also come under fire for her claims of indigeneity. Red Power panel, what do you make of this?
I don't know. I think we need one more consultant, and I believe the person for the job would be Rachel Dolezal.
She'd be perfect for this.
America's sweetheart,
America's sweetheart.
Very knowledgeable on
And a strong
this.
black woman.
Yes.
I believe Elizabeth Warren and Joseph Boyden are about as Indigenous as Fox News. You know, like it's, it's as Indigenous as they get.
What do you make of the idea that he did it in a Paris magazine and not like say Maclean's or
I don't know,
the Walrus or
less
something
chance
like
of him getting caught or being called out? Probably was his thought, like, oh, maybe I can get away if I write in this Paris magazine. No one will read that.
And actually, that's the thing. Like, a lot of people didn't catch it, except for some people who spoke French, who saw his name or something. There's a guy by the name of Daryl LaRue on Twitter, and that's how I found out about it. Was he translated the article.
And he was like, Sacre bleu! That is not real!
All right, so in the article, Boyden cites a Cree elder who called the controversy around his own identity a rite of passage. What do you think of that?
What rite of passage is this?
Didn't that happen to you?
Yeah.
Did you get the memo?
No, I didn't get the memo. I just grew up with like excruciating racism, so I don't know what he's talking about. Yeah, if somebody wants to send that to me.
The rite of passage, you watch Pocahontas 1 and 2, and then you're fine, you know?
There's a sequel?
There is a sequel. I just learned it. You thought the first one was bad.
This time it's personal.
The second one's about going to Europe.
The Revenge. Pocahontas 2, The Revenge.
After you watch the second movie, they let you out of the cupboard. So.
Oh, there we go. Okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate again.
Okay. Oh, no.
Isn't Boyden the best possible person to talk about false claims of identity? Because is this not some kind of a window into his brain?
I mean, sure, yeah. You know, just as well as Rachel Dolezal. And, you know,
Is there any value in this?
probably not a whole lot, you know?
No?
It's something that we know exists and it's happening, and we're aware of it, and we're just like, it sucks. And it's like that we're not doing any science about it. Like, we just, as Indigenous people, we're just like, this is not good, and that's that.
Who would have been better to weigh in on something like this?
Probably an actual Indigenous person.
No.
Yeah.
And I guess, I mean, the claims are, and there were, especially in the U.S., because Elizabeth Warren had claimed to be Cherokee.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there were people who are actually from the Cherokee Nation in the U.S. who very eloquently weighed in on why that's crap.
Well, I feel like if you can take a DNA Ancestry.com thing test, and all of a sudden you find out you're 2% Indigenous, and then you're walking around like you've been traumatized your whole life all of a sudden, like it's baloney. I feel like if you have to remind people that you're Indigenous because of this all the time, I think that diminishes what you think Indigenous means, you know, and I think that's the problem.
Okay, I'm going to ask, this is actually a serious question. So for people who, for whatever reason in history, whether it's the 60 Scoop or hiding their heritage or whatever, when those people come forward now to try and reconnect with their ancestry or their communities, does situations like this make it difficult for them?
I think, you know, and as somebody who grew up in a very predominantly white neighborhood, I would say that, you know, as a kid, I did try to hide my identity. But because I was a little brown kid, it was, you know, something I just couldn't do. So when people who have, you know, hid their identity for so long because of racism and because of persecution, and then, you know, want to reclaim their identity, I think that's a good thing. You know, anyone ever see the movie Thunderheart? You know, Val Kilmer.
That is one of the greatest stories of reconnecting with your heritage.
I heard it in the wind.
He had a vision.
He had a vision. But in all honesty, I do think that if you're somebody who, like, you know you're Indigenous, but you just haven't, you know, embraced that part of your identity and that part of your DNA, I think, you know, if you wake up today and you think, I want to start doing that, I think that's an amazing thing, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
He wasn't happy with that answer. Jesus
No, he was
No, I'm not.
Like,
No pleasing this man.
We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the varying degrees of racism that exist in Canada, because it's actually... Fix yourself some smoked moose meat sandwiches and come right back.
Did you know we got the social medias?
don't lie.
It's true. Like the Laughing Drum on Facebook and follow us on Twitter right now.
It's true. Welcome back to the Laughing Drum, my friends. I'm your host, Tim Fontaine, and I'm here with the Red Power panel. This week, the Red Power panel is comic Sasha Mark and First Nation sensation Melissa Black Wolf kicks in. Let's move on to our third and final topic of the night, everyone's favorite, racism.
What is that?
Yeah, what is that anyways? People who are members of Canada's main political parties don't want non-white immigrants. That shocking news comes to us from the results of an ECHOS survey. So ECHOS is a company that does surveys. According to the survey, 42% of Canadians think there are too many immigrants who aren't white. But the vast majority of those numbers come from conservative supporters, 71% who think there are too many non-white immigrants. Red Power panel, how shocked are you by this news?
Are we
This is my shocked face. So shocking. Yeah, I just don't know how to cope with conservatives being racist.
But it's
My
not
thing
just,
is-
that's the thing. It's, yeah.
I think the shocking thing is like how outwardly racist the Conservative Party or any party was in this poll. You know, like it was very outward. It's a very outward question. The question was pretty much saying, do you want more brown people, immigrants coming into Canada? And they were like, there's too many. Like that's the problem.
But yeah, I mean, I think everybody's talking about the numbers within the Conservative Party, which are high.
Yes.
But I think what people, I've seen a lot of people talking about how actually, like within parties like the NDP and the Green Party, even, that this attitude is held. Like it's pretty high across the board, right?
Yeah, it is.
Does that surprise you? I mean, like even within the Greens?
No, not really.
No?
For whatever reason, my family is very, affiliated with politics, and I'd say I've heard some pretty blatantly racist things coming from people who are very, like socialist NDP type people, even people from the Green Party. I don't know how aware of their racism they are, that, if they're aware that their thoughts and views are racist. But no, it actually does not surprise me one bit. No.
Sasha?
I'm not surprised as well, and I think it's because like when you look at the government and what they have got away with within their own like racism spectrum, you're like, okay, I get it. It makes a lot of sense. So, sometimes when I look at it too, I'm like, isn't it higher? Because some people are just like very aware, like if I put it in we have too many, I'm going to be racist, or it's going to look like that. But I don't know. I think that yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
I'm suspicious of polls sometimes because they only ask, and this isn't trying to let people off or anything like that, but I mean, they ask 1,000 people out of how many millions of people in Canada, right?
Yeah.
How do they know they didn't ask just the most?
They ask all
the
of Selkirk, Manitoba. They have too many, It's like, I'm the only brown person here,
So the pollster, ECHOS, says it's the first time in the 25 years that they've done this poll that the numbers have ever been this high. So it's 25 years.
Do you think it was done through sheer racism?
Oh my God.
No, it's not a good one.
It wasn't. It was so bad it was good. Melissa, you were saying.
I mean, look at our political climate right now. Our neighbors to the south are getting away with such blatant acts of racism, to the point where toddlers are dying as they're being detained because, they don't give a crap about brown people. So I think a lot of that is sort of the ripple effect is, it's hitting Canada, and a lot of people who are closeted racists have come out of the closet. Congratulations, guys. Proud of you.
So stuff like this, it's emboldening people to be openly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. On a piece of land, might I add, that they have no right to have that opinion. Just keep that in check.
Well, that was your public service announcement. We'll kick in. I guess for Indigenous folk, because most of the people that I see, there's a lot of defensiveness, I think, from Canadians to this story. They're like, well, the NDP, it's really low when you compare it to whatever, right? But I mean, for Indigenous folk, there's a lot of not being surprised by this, right? I mean, what does this say then about the relationship between Canada and Indigenous people? Is this...
It's a whole lot of salt.
Yeah.
It's a salty relationship, They sprinkle that shit on everything.
But they don't sprinkle anything else on there,
No other flavor, just salt. Salt and hatred.
So a lot of Indigenous people are saying, well, this is nothing new for us. But you mentioned that a lot of people are emboldened. Do you find that it's more open now, or is it just that we hear it more now because of things like social media, where people spill their guts, basically? I mean, is it more open now, or is this kind of how it's always been?
I think it's blatant. Like, you're having people protest, like avid protests on streets. Maybe it's influenced by social media, but you have people physically interacting in spaces that are like 100% racist. When you have people who are saying like all lives matter and like disregarding black people, like it's like you have people who are 100% very visibly against marginalized folk, and it's a weird time to be right now.
Is the whiteout of Winnipeg racist?
Yeah. Did we go? No, we didn't. Did you go?
Hey, man, I wasn't invited.
Whiteout runs everything.
Does this signal some kind of a shift then?
Yeah, I think with the power of social media, it does make it a lot more dangerous, because people are they're able to gather en masse with social media, with like the Yellow Vest movement and the different neo-Nazi type brotherhoods that they have across Canada. I think it is a lot more dangerous. Like, I remember growing up as a kid in the 80s with, blatant racism, like we still had the word savage in our textbooks. But I think now it's a different kind of racism, but it's still like out there.
It's a dry racism.
It is a dry racism.
And on that note, we got to take a break. Well, we don't have to take a break. We're going to take a break forever. We're leaving you for the night. Thank you so much to our dozens of audience members for tuning in. Thanks to the Red Power panel for being here. Thanks for the crew for making this show happen. We'll see you back here next week. Yes, now you can listen to The Laughing Drum on your smartphone, tablet, or even your Walkman stereo. Subscribe to The Laughing Drum podcast on iTunes and Google Play.